Welcome to the 700 Club. Man, we had a mega million jackpot. Could you imagine $130 million?
I thought it was over $1 billion.
I was kidding, over $1 billion. You're exactly $1 billion. It's so much money I can't even count it all.
No, I mean, how could you spend it? I mean,
well, they can spend. Trust me, they can find ways to spend it. But good grief, this chasing after fortune is just. I think the municipalities are doing the people a great disservice, making them think they can just get rich scheme. But yeah, over 100. What is it now? I've lost track. Is 130 billion? Is 100 billion?
I don't know. I just know it was
not 100 billion.
In the billions, and
200 million or something.
I agree with you. I'm not a fan of the lottery, nor do I play it.
It's the chances of winning about as much chance as you flying with wings up to Mars. Well, with less than 2 weeks from what could be one of the most important midterm elections of all time, for months there's been talk of a blue wave of voters giving the House and the Senate back to the Democrats. Now, that blue wave seems to have broken up. Wendy?
That's right. Races are tightening up as voter enthusiasm has grown in the Republicans' favor. A big reason is backlash following the Democrats' attacks on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation. CBN's Jenna Browder has the story from Washington.
The plants and factories are coming back like never before.
One reason for the recent change in polling is President Trump's nonstop campaigning. So far this month, he's visited 22 cities and plans another 10 rallies before Election Day. His appearances are being met with great enthusiasm. This Texas stadium packed with 18,000 supporters, while tens of thousands more wanted in. It's this enthusiasm that's giving Republicans increased confidence. One administration official tells us they think the president's campaigning and the Supreme Court confirmation of Justice Brett Kavanaugh will help them pick up a seat or two in the Senate. This same administration official also thinks the idea of a blue wave has been overblown.
Anger is the #1 issue on both sides.
Most agree, including CBN's David Brody, who was on NBC's Meet the Press this weekend. Anger is fueling both sides.
The Democrats had the anti-Trump venom going for them. They had the super soaker, if you will. The problem is now Republicans. Problem for Democrats is that Republicans now have their own super soaker in Brett Kavanaugh.
A GOP source on the ground tells CBN News they've seen a major enthusiasm shift because of the ugly Supreme Court battle over Kavanaugh. This source says it's making races in the toss-up states of Missouri, North Dakota, and Indiana much tighter.
She's going to be fantastic, Marsha Blackburn.
In other states like Tennessee, it's neck and neck. Hoping to change that, Representative Marsha Blackburn is full-on embracing Trump and appears to be pulling ahead of her opponent, Phil Bredesen. Then, according to a new Washington Post Schar School poll, the most contested battleground House districts still remain too close to call, with 50% of those polled supporting Democratic candidates and 47% backing Republicans. From now until November 6th, voters can expect to hear a lot of similar themes.
This will be the election of the Caravan, Kavanaugh, law and order, tax cuts, and common sense.
The question is who can keep enthusiasm high enough to drive them to the polls. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. David Brody is CBN's chief political analyst. He's joining us now from Washington. David, there was talk about that blue wave. Where is it now?
Doesn't feel much like a blue wave right now, Pat. Feeling a little bit like basically a blue blip, which means if it's a blue blip, and let's remember, you need 23 House seats to flip for this to be a blue wave and Democrats to take control of the House. This is feeling a little bit more like 15-20 or so in terms of a Democrat pickup. And so if that's the case, that doesn't do the trick for Democrats. Indeed, Republicans would keep control of the House. And in the Senate, it's actually looking even better, as Jenna just reported there. Administration officials and, quite frankly, Republican operatives on the ground do believe that the Senate map looks maybe potentially 1, 2, even 3 additional Senate seats for the Republicans. So this idea of a blue wave is starting to fade pretty quickly, Pat.
Oh, all right, what's going to be picked up? They've got something in North Dakota. They're looking at Missouri. Nevada has been very hotly contested, and Arizona. How does that look? You want to go through the list of them?
Absolutely. Arizona, of course, Jeff Flake's seat, they've got to keep that. That's a Republican seat that they've got to hold. Dean Heller in Nevada, they've also got to hold that seat. Both looked iffy at one point. Now they looked much better. Of course, that's what I like to call the AK, the after Kavanaugh period, instead of the BK before Kavanaugh. And so that looks much better. But Missouri, where Claire McCaskill, the Democrat, is in danger of losing to Josh Hawley. As a matter of fact, hearing now just this morning that there'll be a big pastor event this Friday in Missouri. Pastors not just praying, but doing a lot more activism on the ground in Missouri. And I got to tell you, in Tennessee, Pat, this one's an interesting one. Marsha Blackburn, the Republican, versus Phil Bredesen, the Democrat. And it's neck and neck. Marsha Blackburn has done a full throttle embrace of Donald Trump. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I will tell you, a Republican operative on the ground just telling me this morning that after the Kavanaugh hearings, many Democrats in Tennessee actually pulled their yard signs of Phil Bredesen because they said, hey, you know, Bredesen came out against Kavanaugh, and at that point the yard signs went kaput, and they went in the garbage pile as well.
The usual thinking was that men would come out for the Republican rather strongly, but women were going for the Democrats. Has the Kavanaugh thing, are the women now saying that Kavanaugh got a rough deal?
Well, there's no doubt there's been a Brett bounce, and women have played a part of that. Still, the problem for the Republicans is going to be those suburban independent women, especially, that are not too fond of Trump. Remember, suburban independent women, not suburban Republican women who have soured necessarily on Trump. They'll probably stick with him. It's those suburban independent women. And so then it gets into the electorate. And one of the things I'm going to be watching on election night, Pat, is how this electorate is made up. Exactly. How many suburban independent women turn from supporting Trump and the Republicans in 2016 compared to 2018? And also, how many minorities get out there? How many millennials get out there? I think that's going to be important. And, of course, we know about evangelicals. You know, Pat, in every midterm, 26% of the electorate is made up of evangelicals. That's huge. As a matter of fact, that doesn't change from midterm to midterm. In other words, in 2014, it was 26% of the electorate. 2010, 1996, you go back. They've got to be north, though. Evangelicals are going to have to be north of that 26%, I think, for Republicans and this White House to do well because of such anti-Trump venom on the left.
Well, how about this Caravan? You know, it looks like the thing's being set up by leftist groups, the so-called Libre down in Honduras and other agitators, but the press is presenting it as poor migrants who are suffering and need to get let into this country. Well, what do you think the mood of the electorate is about that?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. First of all, it's interesting you said that. Just this morning, I saw a headline on CNN, and they had a shot of the Caravan, and it said desperate journey. I think other people might term it a bit differently, that believe that there are potentially some bad actors in that Caravan. I mean, let's face it, there's thousands of them in there. Not obviously all of them, but some of them. But look, this is a winning issue for Donald Trump and the Republicans. And more than that, when you talk to independents in this country, folks that really couldn't give a rip if they were Republican or Democrat. But when it comes to this idea of common sense and protecting our borders and not letting folks that want to enter our country illegally and then go ahead and grab some benefits that belong to Americans, then it becomes a common sense situation for independents. And I think that's the problem for Democrats here, is that that middle ground, Donald Trump and Republicans will win those independents quite a bit because they understand that a caravan coming to the United States like this doesn't necessarily bode well for what they believe America has stood for many, many years.
Yeah, I understand another one is forming in Guatemala. They get one. If it's successful, the next wave comes in. What races are you following? I know this 7th in Virginia, this Brat thing, is a possible switch for the Democrats. Do you have any other House races you're looking at?
Well, you're talking about Dave Brat in Virginia for sure. Remember, he beat Eric Cantor, obviously, a few years ago, or it was more than a few years ago now. He was the House Majority Leader at the time, so that was a big one. Yeah, he's in a toss-up race. Look, there are about 70 or so toss-up races around. These are House races in the toss-up category. And besides Dave Brat, there's a couple key ones in California. Duncan Hunter down in that San Diego area. I'll be watching that one. Dana Rohrabacher in California 48. That district, very, very important. These are toss-ups. Typically, San Diego, Republican country down there overall, but they're in toss-up races. If they start losing down there, that would signal potentially a blue wave, so we'll watch those for sure.
Well, historically, the party out of power has picked up in the House as many as 30, 35 seats. Are we going to hold that, or you think it's going to be in the 20s?
Yeah, it feels a little bit more like the upper teens, maybe 20 or so that Democrats pick up. That won't do the trick. That won't get them the House. I will say this, that a lot of folks have been making comparisons to 2010 and 1994. Those were big wave elections. Remember, 1994, Pat, as you know, contract with America. That was Newt Gingrich, and Republicans dinged up Bill Clinton pretty good in that one. 2010, same thing happened to Barack Obama, President Obama, where the Tea Party came in. Both movements fueled by anger from the electorate. Now we move to 2018, and we had anger before from the Democrats against Trump, but after Kavanaugh, the AK period in political history, after that, Pat, now you've got, as I like to call them, a super soaker of anger on both sides. And so, therefore, I'm not expecting 2010 or 1994 because, remember, there was anger only on one side back then. Now you've got anger on both sides, and they're super soaker fighting this whole thing out. So it's going to be kind of wet and nasty.
Well, I can hardly wait. Thank you so much, David. The anger election. It's not a question of having anger. It's a question of, do you get up and vote? And I want to say it again. Your vote counts, and especially among evangelicals, which have been so solid. But the evangelicals, you know, again, when a coin was presented to Jesus and they said, who should I pay taxes to? Should I pay it to Caesar? And he said, render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Well, what Caesar in a democracy demands is informed intelligence, active citizenship, and you need to vote. All right, Wendy.
When have we ever cared about the midterms like we do right now?
Well, when you've got the control of Congress, this huge agenda that Trump has put out, deregulation, tax cuts, a booming economy, strength overseas, all the things he's done. The Democrats, you know, this guy down in Texas says, first thing, I'm going to vote to impeach the president. What did he do to get in? You got to have high crimes and misdemeanors. What are you going to impeach him on? Well, I'm going to vote to impeach him. Well, that's what these Democrats are saying. The minute we're in, we're going to start giving difficulty. We're going to slow everything down. We're going to be nothing but a force for negativity. And that's not a winning thing. And if people go for that, there's something wrong with them. But nevertheless, that's what's out there, and that's what's at stake. I mean, it's Trump. But Trump, I mean, can you imagine that he's hit 22 cities?
Wow.
Unbelievable. No president, I think, in history has ever campaigned like he has.
It's going to be amazing at the polls.